We're about halfway through the UFL season. SharkDawg walks away. The Roughnecks get their first win. All that and more on the UFL podcast.
1, 2, 3.
Everybody to another amazing edition of the UFL podcast. I'm the rep representing Pro Football Newsroom, the leaders in spring football news, and boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, do we got a big week for ya. But before we get started, I'm joined as always by my man, Zach Kylman. How you doing today, my friend?
I'm so glad to see you back from preseason. It's great to have you in for the show. Look at you. We have come such a long way in 4 weeks. It's nice to see you back. But in reality,
what do you mean? We've only been 1 week in. I know I said halfway through the
preseason.
Season.
Preseason's is weeks. Time still moves with preseason. I said time. I didn't say that it counts. Hey, now you're getting ahead of me. Let's chill out a little bit. But no, behind the curtain, glad to have you back. You've been one busy boy over there in Texas, so good to have you back on the show. And it's time flies when you're having fun, and time flies when you've been staying away from the show. It's already mid season for us.
It's crazy. It's crazy. I know. Usually I get lucky with these big work projects. They happen in the off season. Not this one. This one has been hot and heavy. Honestly, dating back to probably like August. We've been working on this thing, and as I was saying, we're far from done, but the biggest hurdle is over, and now I feel like I can finally fully enjoy spring football. I've been watching it. I've been at all the games. Clearly we did Spring Stock 3. We were there for both days in Arlington and then in Houston. I was out in Arlington last week with my boy James Larson. And now I'm going to be out here this week in Houston, which last week we saw the ref cam, Zach. What'd you think of the ref cam?
Yeah, ref cam was great, dude. Getting a few of those extra angles in, kind of that one-on-one. Kind of gave me the UFL like helmet cam vibes is what I was getting out of that. So it was a nice little addition, nice touch to the atmosphere. Pretty decent crowd, not going to lie. Well, you look good on TV, looked rowdy on TV. It does help you get your first win there, or your first regular season win as you're putting it in. But
first win of the season.
Looked like a fun time, and the glasses help a lot. Actually, really impressed by the tech, not gonna lie. I like
Me
the tech.
too. And they just added some new features to it the other day. They just added some more of the generative AI. You can do video calls with it now, which is kind of cool, but then you can't see the person anyway. It's cool in concept. We're getting there. I'm telling you, 3 years from now, everybody's, the Apple Vision Pro, 3 years from now, the Apple Vision Pro is going to be in a set of just eyeglasses like that. I book it. Well, we're already seeing TCL is putting out a pair this year, and I would have gotten them, but they look horrible.
Well.
I mean, I might not seem like it, but I do like a little bit of style. So when they had those Ray-Ban Metas, I'm not a huge fan of Meta, but I am a fan of Ray-Bans. So, sign me up. Anyway, we're getting off topic. We got a big week, a lot of things to talk about. Before we do that, here's the things we need you to do. First, subscribe. Click the bell. It builds morale. Is your team not doing as good as my Houston Roughnecks? Are you the former XFL champion Arlington Renegades? Are you a fan of them? And you're looking for a win, and you're looking at the Roughnecks and saying, man, they got a better record than the former XFL champions? Well, click the bell. It builds morale, and it also lets you know when we go live, just like every Monday at 6 p.m. Eastern, with Around the UFL, just like Spring Stock and just like Summer Stock 3, which will be coming up at the end of the season. Make sure you're following us over on social media at UFL Podcast, Facebook, Instagram, all the places, the TikTok. And you also have the addition of the ref cam now over on at UFL Newsroom, at the Ref Says. Follow us on Insta, follow us on Twitter. You know the deal. X, whatever the hell you want to call it. Old merch, new merch, it don't matter. Use the code USFL Newsroom over at, who is even the sponsors? Breaking Tea. Go over to Breaking Tea. See, this is what happens when I take a couple weeks off. USFL Newsroom. Save yourself 10% off. They have some old USFL gear. They have some old XFL gear, but they also have new official UFL gear. Go and get it. Go support the channel and go and save yourself 10%. And hey, become a ducking legend. Click the link down below. Go get the official Ducky merch. It's limited time. People were angry at the end of last season when we cut it off. We're cutting it off again at the end of this season. But the good news is all the proceeds go to Feeding America. That's the charity. We're giving, last year we donated over 1,000 meals. Help us top that this year. And it's easy. Go get a shirt. Go get a hoodie. Go get a hat. And we even saw some pictures of the hoodies. Better quality than last year. Every year we're a little bit better than the last. So go down below, click the link, and we'll be announcing those numbers at Summer Stock 3, which is, I don't know, like 8 weeks away, which is kind of crazy to think about. It's coming up fast and furious, just like the halfway point of this season. So let's dive right in. So we talked about a little bit on ATU this weekend. We talked about week 4. We got into the mix of it. I mean, my big takeaway is everybody should be scared of the Roughnecks. What a difference a Mark Thompson makes. We beat down the reigning, defending XFL champions, the Arlington Renegades, in the Texas Throwdown, which I'm wearing the shirt right now. I'm not going to go through the whole hassle. It's my new favorite shirt. I have some
Doesn't
bones
it also
to
have
pick
the
with
Brahmas
shirt.
on it, though? Doesn't it?
It is, but because it's Texas as a whole, I love that. Do you see a Michigan anything T-shirt other than just the piddly old Panthers on it? I don't think so.
But I hold the Throwdown as between only the two teams. I don't count the Brahmas in there because the Throwdown goes back to 2020.
Oh, I agree. It should have been the Texas Triangle. But you know what? And actually, it should be called the Texas Beatdown because of the way that the Houston Roughnecks are just tossing them aside left and right. Anyway, I don't want to go too much into week 4. We dived into all that on the previous show. But any other final thoughts before we do jump into week 5? We got roster moves. There's some big roster moves too, Zach.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that was going on this week on the transaction wire. I don't have too much to say from week 4 left. What I will put is, it's nice to see we're getting closer. I always like to hope that every team gets at least a W by the end of the year. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure what's up with Arlington. We're going to find out sooner rather than later, but good to at least get one more off the board that someone's going to be having to take at least one away. Whether you count as preseason or not, I live in a different world is what's happening right here. So most of my stuff does come from this week, and mainly some of the roster moves that came along with it, and just some sad things to talk about. I guess more like a happy trails type of moments this week with a few retirements and one big retirement in particular that we have to talk about today.
Yeah, and I know this is one that Stallions fans are not going to want to hear. They probably already are aware of it. This happened earlier this week. Scooby Wright has decided to step away. He was going to go out, it sounded like, on the injury list, and so, might as well go out on top. And it's a shame because when we look back at the history of spring football, not the USFL, not the XFL, not the UFL, but spring football, modern spring football, there's a few names that we all think of that come top of mind. And one of these guys is Scooby Wright, whether it was the XFL, the original in 2020, or the AAF, or any of the leagues that have come between. Scooby Wright has been there. He's been a winner. And I mean, he has 2 rings to prove it. And so Stallions fans, this has to sting because even when he wasn't playing in the game, he was a presence on the sideline, right? He was almost that extra mascot for the team, out there revving it up, getting it ready, getting players hype for the play. So this one, I mean, to me, and there's some other shock, and this is just the tip of the iceberg, Zach. There's some other names in this list that we're going to look at and say, wow, these are like mainstays in spring football. But Scooby Wright, man, it's a shame. I'm glad I got my SharkDawg shirt. If you didn't get your SharkDawg shirt already, make sure you get yours. I think he has his own that he sells through. I'll have to get the name and I'll find it and I'll link it down below. There's like a Birmingham sports shop, a local place that I know a few of the players had their own merch. So make sure you're supporting these guys. Make sure you're supporting them, because did he not bring us years of entertainment? I know I'm not even a Stallions fan, and he brought me years of entertainment.
Well, he brought a good image to the league of someone that I think that a lot of these spring leagues and a lot of the smaller leagues want. They want a character. They want someone that is a relatable face for fans to connect with. It's kind of harder to do when you have players that do, they're moving this as a stepping stone to go back up, or they're trying to stay up in the upper levels like the NFL, or even some go to the CFL in that case. But like, Scooby was a consistent presence, and not only in the USFL or the UFL, but I mean AAF days as well. He made his own name there too. Very much is the underdog story that we all talk about in spring football. Because remember, incredible college linebacker by statistics, excellent at University of Arizona, one of the legends that has come out of that school in the last 2 decades. It's just NFL prototypically undersized linebacker. And that's what is the deal is, this is the type of league where like you try and kind of break those narratives. You try and, kind of show off, hey, maybe you misevaluated me. Maybe I needed a little more time. Maybe I can show off that I am as valuable as you expect. And he had some solid, consistent performances through his ventures in spring football to try and get back up there. He didn't get signed in his times over the last 3 years. But what he brought, even through injury, even through battling through injuries, is he brought a ton of commitment to the sport and brought some exciting moments and sound bites that we got to enjoy. He's a guy you can rally behind. Like I said, it's the underdog character. That's what spring football has a lot of. He's like the prototypical underdog character and excelled where he was at too. I'm always going to have in my head, I don't remember what podcast he was on, but the story of him getting a pick six in the USFL championship in 2022, and how he wasn't even supposed to be out there, and he's basically already pulled his hamstring by the time he gets down to the end zone. That story is going to live on in my head forever. But that's just, I don't know. He's just a scrappy underdog type of guy, and the type of dude that any average Joe can get behind.
100%. You know what I do hope that he continues to explore, because I think he'd be perfect for it. We saw it in the off season, him doing tryouts for the WWE or getting into professional wrestling as a whole, because I feel like he is perfect for that. He's a great talker. He's got the body for it. He's got the build, right? I think that would be a fun transition for one of these guys. And clearly there's the connection. We look at who's the big man on campus. Well, that's Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. He's also on the board of directors for a little company called TKO, which has WWE. This weekend, we're going to talk about this a little bit more later in this episode. Mm-hmm. Birmingham Stallions, they're taking on the Houston Roughnecks in Houston. Who's going to be there? WWE Hall of Famer, Booker T. So clearly there's the connections between not just football, but these spring leagues. I mean, Vince McMahon was involved with the original XFL. The Rock is involved with the new XFL and the new UFL. Fox, which had currently airs SmackDown, has a stake in the UFL, own the USFL. We had WWE Star Night in the USFL. We had Big E as the MC for every, all of the Michigan home games. So clearly there is a connection between pro wrestling and spring football. And funny enough, Zach, there were players from XFL 2001 that ended up transitioning into professional wrestling. A few, they escaped me off the top of my head. But there were a few. So to me, though, Scooby Wright, I mean, he's got the character already. SharkDawg. Even if you call him Scooby Wright, Like that in
persona's
itself,
there.
the persona is there. He's got the look. He's got the build. And I feel like he has the connections. But it is a shame to know that we're not going to see him on the spring football field. And now some of these other guys we'll talk about, we may see return. They're not retiring. They've been waived, though. But still some shocking names here, Zach. Arlington.
A little bit.
Taylor Russolino. I mean, going back to 2020, Taylor Russolino was their guy, right? So one of the few guys to play 3 seasons in, whatever, the XFL/UFL, not making the cut. Channing Stribling, which, I mean, is crazy. When you look at the production that we saw over the last couple of years in the USFL out of him. And, he's with the Battlehawks now, didn't make the cut. Jordan Sewell, another one of these guys who, whether it was the Spring League or the USFL, was always kind of producing, putting up numbers, getting it done. I mean, and again, there's so many other names in this list here because we'll get down to just injuries and other things like that. But Zach, my God, we knew that this is going to be tough competition this year. Only because we saw how things went with the draft. Look at the names that didn't make the cut. Now that we're seeing some of these guys either retiring or we're seeing them waived, and we're seeing some movement because we're getting to the halfway point of the season, as we mentioned, and this is kind of the make or break. I mean, if you're the Arlington Renegades and you want to get back to the championship with a 4-6 record, you got to get those 4 wins somewhere.
Well, right? I mean, I'm actually surprised that there wasn't, I would say, even more activity with Arlington. They've really been still and I think James would echo the same thing if he was on here this week. He'd be saying the same. They've been very complacent with the roster they have outside of some necessary moves. Taylor Russolino, I mean, I don't know if that was 100% necessary. I know injury knocked him out a week prior, and maybe they just wanted to move in a different direction, but I'm shocked that they haven't been as active on the transactions list still. They're 4 weeks in, going to be week 5, and still looking for a win. I said last week that I thought this was going to be whoever won against Houston would be a make or break for their season. It's still, there's an outside shot, but I mean, it's fading even faster by the week, and it feels like nothing's really getting changed. It's kind of very complacent. It's looking pretty ugly over there, honestly, and I don't know what to do. But I do see teams making moves that, like you said, that did surprise me, or like it's just injuries come up. It's just how it works. And in the case of, say, Michigan, I think that one's more like Jordan Sewell. That's more of just looking for something more of a spark and performance. Maybe a bit more of the roster move for guys coming back is the deal, but it is what it is. Sewell never seemed to gel, is the thing. And I think that's what is part of the issue here, is that they're looking for someone that can maybe get more of an impact, or maybe separates himself from maybe like a Marcus Sims, because they both, to me, have very similar skill sets. So Marcus kind of takes over a lot of targets, as well as Trey Quinn. They picked up Gavin Holmes from Baylor to help with that, maybe see if he's a better fit here. But Jordan, I hope, lands somewhere. I think he's still got a lot in the tank. Stribling, I'm not 100% what's going to happen to him post this cut, because he's been in professional football in some capacity for a while now, and he was already kind of buried in the St. Louis roster anyway. So that one I find is going to be a little harder for to see where he's going to go. Right,
yeah, and then injury bug. Chris Blewett. We already knew, right? He's hurt. But we have EJ Perry, which it looks like it might be a little bit more significant than we initially thought. He's been moved to the injury reserved. So, I mean, as a Panthers fan, you're kind of on the precipice right there. You're at number 2 in the USFL division. The Roughnecks are knocking on your door, and that cannot feel good, because you know that the Roughnecks are going to win out the rest of the season. How you feeling on keeping up with the veracity of the Houston team?
I think we will be fine if we can figure out an offensive line structure that works best, is what is bugging me. EJ being out is not ideal. I will say, though, Danny Etling, for the limited time he came in, sans one interception, did show out and showed some flair. So that's a good sign. Otherwise, for pickups in terms of just seeing who else they're going to have on roster, I do like the pickup of Bryce Perkins, someone who's been in the NFL now for the last few years, former Virginia quarterback, bit more on the younger side, and kind of the guy that's prototypical to come into these leagues and try and get more reps. And he kind of fits a little bit more the mobility as well for aspects. So, not too shabby. If Etling doesn't work out, they do have someone that they can kind of revert to really quick. But, it's a shame because EJ, really his issues have mostly come from just lack of protection. And I don't know how much that changes with either one of these two being in. They didn't really make too many moves. They didn't really make any move this week to really address the offensive line concerns. I think it's just going to be more reshuffling. But, Perkins being picked up, necessary move. I like the move. It's just I don't know if whoever's in, I don't know what's going to be done to address the O-line issues. It's execution and performance. It's a double whammy of problems. Luckily this week they're playing a team that has equally as bad of options on the other side of that ball as well in Memphis.
Yeah. I mean, and we'll get to the action coming up, but yeah, I seem to agree. If there's any chance to rebound, it's this week, and if you don't, then then it's time to start worrying, I'd say, right?
Yeah, just a bit.
So as we look at these transactions, because there's a whole lot, is there any others that you want to pick out of here just to spotlight? Because if we talk about all of them, we'll be here, I feel like, forever.
Well, that's okay. Well, I know, for example, Birmingham fans have been dealing with a ton of the special teams signings, or in terms of not only signings, but just special teams injuries have been a problem, like Kobe Wadman. So they picked up Drew Chrisman, former Ohio State punter, to help supplement with that injury on that part of the special teams unit. We already talked about how Blewett's on IR, which is a shame. They do have luckily Ramiz Ahmed. I was mixing up the names, and I'm not going to say a Kevin Kugler farce of a name that he's been doing, because that was something we talked about at ATU this week. But yeah, they have Ramiz Ahmed, luckily, to lock things down there. I like Memphis picking up DJ Daniel. Kind of felt he shouldn't have been let off the roster in the first place. I know I know John DeFilippo had stated previously that he felt it came down to a very finite cut with him. And he was one of the first guys he was going to call back if a spot opened, and sure enough, a spot open. I think DJ brings a pretty good presence to their secondary. Clearly is a high level player, someone that I felt should have already been picked up by now. But them's the breaks, and roster construction comes down to the individual coaching staff. So I was glad to see him back. I saw a lot of Battlehawks fans are happy to see Stephen Mitchell returning, USC receiver. That one got a lot of praise this week. So getting to see what he can do in depth, and credit, they have some injury woes that they're worrying about. As we saw, Butler, it was on the injury report this week, so they're going to have to, part of that's probably a move to at least add some depth, because I don't know if he's going to be playing or not, but we'll keep an eye on that as the week goes on. Beyond that, not too much else I would say that sticks out a ton to me. Houston continuing to rotate their roster, I feel like that's what they've been doing pretty consistently at this point. So you see Reggie Robertson Jr. from Southern Methodist, or SMU, coming in, and then Christopher Allen, middle linebacker from Alabama. So I think they're part injury issues, part just getting some new talents and seeing what sticks and what doesn't. At least Houston's doing what Arlington should be doing right now, and that's a good thing to have, is to just, you still have a shot at the playoffs. So keep on, if you can find ways to improve your roster in season and, kind of claw back, not a bad way to do it.
I wouldn't say claw back is the right phrase.
You dropped 3 preseason games.
Preseason. See, 9-0 is all I know. It's right there below my name. 9-0 is all I know. And we're going to talk about week 5 here, because I have some interesting thoughts on everything. I think everybody's pretty happy that the ref is back, because they love the refs. Interesting thoughts on the games. And you know what? I'm going to have an interesting thought that I think everyone's going to agree with to kick things off here. Week 5, it's Texas, right? We have San Antonio Brahmas Arlington Renegades. We have the Birmingham Stallions in Houston. Do you know what problem we have here, Zach? Same day, same time. And so I get the regional broadcasting when you have a game in the South and a game in the North, a game in the East and a game in the West, a game in one state and a game in another state. But when you're talking about two games that are 3 hours apart, me, Zach, I don't even know what game I'm going to get if I'm going to be at the game in Houston, right? But if I'm at my home, what game am I going to get? I'm closer to Houston, but I'm not in Houston. I'm closer to Aggie Land than Houston, and Aggie Land considers themselves more Dallas than they do Houstonians. So I would assume I would get the Roughnecks game. But, like, what if you're in Aggie Land? Right there in between. In Aggie Land, for people that don't know, that's College Station, where Texas A&M plays. Like, what game are they going to get? Because they could easily be fans of any of these three teams. They're almost smack dab in the middle of Houston, San Antonio, Dallas. Waco's a great example. Like, what game is Waco going to get? I assume that it'll be the top one.
And I'll be honest with you, if we're talking this week, so last week's games were pretty split across market. It was like 35 got the Michigan and San Antonio market game, and then 33 got the Birmingham Stallions and DC Defenders. This week, unless you are in Albuquerque, Austin, Dallas, Oklahoma City, Sacramento, San Antonio, or San Francisco, you're going to be seeing Birmingham versus Houston. So they very much stack the deck this week to have the Stallions on air. And I have a theory, personally, here's the thing. Which matchup would you rather watch? It's still kind of feels a little lopsided based on the records, but would you rather watch the Stallions, who have been pulling pretty decent TV numbers on average anywhere they played, against a Roughnecks team that still is very much in competition in this part of the season for a playoff spot? Or would you watch the Brahmas take on the Renegades for a market that not only has been getting poor ticket sales lately, I hate to bring it up, but it's unfortunate is the case, and this game this weekend is not tracking much better, as well as the fact that they are the worst team in the league record-wise at 0-4, and not as close in a playoff capacity to getting a number 2 seed at the minimum. That's kind of where I'm thinking, is what Fox is thinking, is let's lean a little heavier into the Birmingham side of things with the ratings being better.
Birmingham side of things. See, here's I'm agreeing with you, Zach.
I know you're going to do your spiel, but the stats say the Stallions are one of the top 3 most watched teams in the country.
And this is why.
That also includes St. Louis and Michigan, by the way.
And this is why the Houston Roughnecks are getting the spotlight over those other piddly 2 Texas teams, because, well, I'm actually going to save it because let's talk about this first game. I'm going to save my fact-filled spiel until we get to the second game.
If you want me to give you a mulligan, I know a lot of people made a stink about the FS1 broadcast this past week and it drawing 243. I'm going to be honest with you, no one should really be surprised. We all have seen data for 3 straight years now. That was not going to draw well. So, I know some people are like, oh God, the sky's falling. I was like, guys, it's the one game they were going to play and we knew this was coming. I would have been shocked if it had gotten above 250K. Yeah. So whatever. I give a mulligan to that broadcast anyway. But again, look, Birmingham is actually a pretty good draw for the television side, is the thing. But for the matchup side of things, besides the fact the Brahmas and the Renegades are not going to be seen as much across the country, Arlington, I don't know, man. I'm like I said, I'm worried. They have done little to nothing to try and improve. And it almost feels like, unless Bob Stoops is just trying to lull us to sleep and do the same thing as last year, team's kind of sleepwalking right now.
Yeah.
They're just existing. That's it. There's no urgency to improve anything right now.
Well, and I'll tell you this, according to a clip that was on the internet and then it disappeared from AJ Smith, the offensive coordinator for the Brahmas, it sounds like it's a little bit of a revenge game for him when it comes down to not necessarily the Brahmas taking on the Renegades, but what he considers that the Renegades did to his then team, Roughnecks, last year. And, so it's funny to see the urgency on both sides, right? Because we have Bob Stoops, who you would think would be really urgent to get that win so he can get his 200th professional football win under his belt, right? Mm-hmm. Still hasn't gotten it this season. You would think, like, throughout these last 2 seasons, you would have think he would have gotten that extra win. He didn't get there. He's still looking for that. But then on the other side, and they're, like you said, Zach, not really making those adjustments. I think there was a lot of people confused by the Taylor Russolino waiving. Like, well, that's not the problem on the team. Now, again, injury may be partially to blame for that, so I'm not going to...
Oh, sure. But even then, you and I watched the game last week. We saw it in person. Mm-hmm. The Renegades, one of their punts in the first half was from inside the 40, and it would have been something Taylor would have kicked. And I'm like, this is a joke, right? Like, they did this dinky little, like, 25-yard punt instead of trying to go for a field goal in this situation. But what do I know? I mean, again, it feels like they aren't moving the needle too much. And the thing that's not going to help is San Antonio, even with making a quarterback change last week, watching my own Panthers take them on. Mm-hmm. Offense still is churning and continuing to move just like it should have. It's A.J. Smith's system. They basically plopped in a QB, and QB ran the system, difference being more deep throws, which is scarier to me. Right. Because there's more deep bombs being thrown. More aggressiveness is being taken place. That's a little bit of a problem for a team that does not have much pass rush or secondary protection going on whatsoever through 4 weeks.
Yeah. And I'll tell you this, Zach, in funny instances, here's the one thing that I'll give this game, just for the fact that it's not going to be seen by many people. It probably has the chance to be the most entertaining game this week. Not for anything that actually has to do with gameplay or players or anything, but that's how it works in sports. That's how it works in spring football, especially. It's like the greatest game that nobody ever saw. There's a game in the 70s that was like,
yes,
nobody, but it was just ended up being this could be that game. So if you're thinking about sleeping on this game and this is the game you get in your market, I'm telling you should probably tune in. Well, one thing we've seen with the UFL, you can't count any of these teams out, and the Brahmas are one of those teams. So I wouldn't actually doubt that we see the Renegades have like a lead going into the third. Let off the gas. And then we have that famous last 5 minutes AJ Smith drive. I know I always act like he's a player, but he really is playing Madden out there, it feels like. Right?
As much as I love Wade Phillips, he is kind of the head, heart, and soul of the Brahmas. I'm not going to lie. Even broadcasts, I think, talk about AJ Smith more than Wade Phillips, and we all kind of know why. He's kind of feels more like the heart and soul of the team and like what the movement is for the Brahmas right now. So, that just honest opinion. And I get it. I totally get it. And I'll tell you, if the Renegades do have a chance, it is going to be if they can get a passing game that gets the ball out really fast. Basically, if you mimic the A.J. Smith style of passing game, which is just don't F around in the pocket, just get the first 2 reads and find a guy open, you might have a chance to do some damage because the Brahmas secondary is, from what I've evaluated, their weak point. Their front 7 is deadly. It is one of the best pass rushing units in the UFL this year. Wade Phillips' defense has shown out and has caused havoc on a consistent level through the season. But as we saw against St. Louis, if you get the passes out and if you can get into the second level with some throws and let your playmakers do the work, that's what can hopefully open up some opportunities to keep with the Brahmas. That's what hopefully Chuck Long is going to be evaluating, because if they decide to do anything funky in the backfield, if they do dropbacks where you're expecting your line to hold up for that 3+ second bubble that we always talk about with linemen, I don't trust it. You're going to have to get the ball out. Shotgun, real quick throws. I don't trust the run game anyway for the Arlington Renegades. They haven't done much to improve it. And I joke again, because if James was on here, mentioning the Renegades run game is a trigger word or trigger phrase at this point. So I leave it at that. The quick passes are going to be their savior if they have any shot against San Antonio.
It'll here, like I said, I'm going to be at that Stallions Roughnecks game, so I'll be rewatching this game when I get home I'm going to do my best not to see any spoilers, which is going to be tough because we're going to be covering all the games online. So we'll see. But I have, Zach, I've watched plenty of games over again. Speaking of which, one of them this week, I was going through and watching old games, just putting up clips of them. And
it's like several years old type of games.
Yeah. Well, I pulled up the Roughnecks Dragons game, the last game they had in 2020, just because it had such a funny ending, and I wanted to laugh at Seattle.
Okay.
And man, it did make me reminisce about those days, those broadcasts, the progressive insurance countdown to kickoff, and watching the coaches in the locker room. I do want to see more of that. I wish we would have. I think we did in a couple of these games, had a little bit of leeway going into the game where you get some more footage. Some of them go right into the game, which makes sense because we do, depending on the schedule. But man, it did make me miss some of the aspects of that original league. But I do want to see some of those things come back. But historically, which leads me to our next game, the Birmingham Stallions and the Houston Roughnecks. Zach, a couple quiz questions for you. Who's the last team to beat the Birmingham Stallions? Oh, I might have lost Zach.
I think my internet completely ate it.
Oh, no, that's fine. We're going to leave that in. Zach, quiz question here. Who's the last team to beat the Birmingham Stallions?
The Houston Gamblers, now the Houston Roughnecks of today.
Second, part 2. Who is the only team to beat the Stallions in their inaugural 2022 season, where nobody can deny they were the most dominant team in spring football?
Mm-hmm. It was the Gamblers. The Gamblers have been, yes, whatever Houston team that the Stallions have had to face in the last 2 years has had their number in some way. Mm-hmm. It is a phenomenon. Sometimes you get these Achilles heel teams, and it works like that. It just happens to work out like that.
And I'm telling you, Zach, because they're on an 11-game winning streak at this point, I believe. I think that's where they're at. It just feels like they're ready for a loss. Last week was close. Last week, they narrowly edged it out against the DC Defenders, and even I was biting my nails. No, Stallions, you have to pull it out because next week is the week that you're getting that loss.
It can't be them. It has to be for me to enjoy.
Exactly. Now, some people are going to call me a USFL homer for that, but no. I'm a Houston homer. Get it right. The rest of the league, I don't care about.
I don't really know how that's considered I guess if you're talking the conference debate, but whatever. People, if you know how he is, you clearly know he wants it to have just that little token in his pocket to be like, we did it again. Look at this. We got another Stallions win. But it's so strange that it somehow doesn't matter who is coaching, who's behind center. The only factor's been Mark Thompson's been part of each one of these teams is really the big one. Or Chris Odom now, because Odom's back after a year away. And that's kind of funny how that all works out. But yeah, it's something about Houston, something about H-Town coming to town or being in the vicinity of this of Skip Holtz and company just throws a monkey wrench into the plans every time.
So beyond the game, we're going to break down the game here shortly, but before we get into that, before the game, you may have saw the announcement on social media earlier this week. WWE Hall of Famer Booker T and his Reality of Wrestling is going to be throwing a little shindig before the game. So if you had any reason to come down to the game, you weren't sure, but you're a fan of wrestling. Like I said, there are these connections. You can meet Booker T down there, which a funny story that I'll throw in here. So my wife works at a resort not too far from here, and she met Booker T's wife, Queen Charmel, just within the last week. And when she was there, she showed her a picture of me meeting Booker T at the first XFL game in 2020 in Houston. And so it'll be funny now that a week later I'm going to go see Booker T, and maybe I'll show her the picture of my wife and his wife. And so this is how things go. But this is just another sign of good things to come in Houston. Booker T is a legend out here. Booker T, even before I lived in Houston, was one of my favorite wrestlers. I can dig it, sucker. Five-time WCW champion Booker T and King Booker, and even his time in TNA, even though people didn't like it, I got signed up on it. Now he's out here with Reality of Wrestling, and he owns it. That's his own wrestling league. They play out closer to Galveston. We were talking about that earlier. But they're going to be doing a wrestling show and a meet and greet before the game in Houston. So if you're coming out, come out early. If you weren't sure about coming out, come out early. Come meet the legend. And we're going to have ref cam. So if you miss it, make sure you're over on social media because we'll have the ref cam. Maybe we'll get some comments from Mr. Booker T on his thoughts on the UFL. And throw it up on social media. But I'm actually super excited about that on top of the game.
Well, I know you, I don't know how many other people know of you, but you clearly have shown the ref here is a massive professional wrestling fan outside of football. Dude loves going to events, and he tells me all the time when he goes to some of the crazier ones that he's been to, or if they're in the Houston area in particular. But yeah, Booker T, I mean, look, the name in the community is insane. Two-time Hall of Famer as well, for that. Multiple accolades across the different landscape of wrestling for multiple different performances. Great talent. But what I love is the promotion. It just, you try and find synergies and you try and find extra stuff to incentivize people to come out. And what's cool is this is an actual wrestling event going on as the kickoff to go into the game. So, he gets to bring his own promotion. They're going to have their own ring and everything all set up outside of Gate 1 is Rice Stadium, they said, at 4:30. And so hour and a half lead in to then go in for the 6 o'clock Central game to play against Birmingham. So great setup. And I want to see more of this. Again, we want to see more of these fan engagement things. I know the merger kind of slowed down a lot of the stuff you can maybe plan for. And we're starting to see during the season, they're finding stuff like mid-season to throw in as they go. And that's the thing what I hope for next year. I want to see like this increasingly get back to that is now we have the leagues merged. That's over with. Next year, you can see like even more stuff like this at even grander scale to help bring people in. So, and this stuff is great. Like Houston, that area of Texas is a wrestling hub. So this is an excellent job picking out a promotion for those coming to the game and to say, hey, besides getting affordable tickets, why not get a free wrestling promotion with a legend right outside at the tailgate lot, which that tailgate lot in Houston, anyway,
and not to mention,
without the
Zach,
promotion,
they
is
have
a fantastic tailgating experience
anyway
that I've been to.
$10. So you can get to a game for $10, and I think they even have a promotion for teachers.
I did.
Where if you're a teacher, you can get a special link where it's buy one, get one free. So you can get $10 for 2 tickets, and if you're a wrestling fan, you can bring 2 people, go see a wrestling show and a football game, and the Houston Roughnecks rough up the Birmingham Stallions, the undefeated Birmingham Stallions. We're going to put a blemish on their record this Saturday night. And Zach, I mean, we talked about with the USFL and the XFL being one of the best deals in sports, right? When we look at the NFL, even the worst team in the league, you're going to get a nosebleed ticket for the cost of probably what's a season ticket in the UFL for like a front row center, right? Like front row, 50-yard line, you're there $1,000 or less in any of these markets. Where, I mean, the Lions, I was looking at games last year just because they were playing good. It's like $300 to $600 and you're still in the nosebleeds. And so now you have an opportunity, meet a legend, come see like I said, the Roughnecks roughing them up on broadcast TV, which this is going to be great to just so the world sees not only, and this is really good, I'm sorry in advance, all Birmingham fans, but not only is our barbecue better than yours, but our team is better than yours too. And we're going to find out this weekend. Don't block me, please. Stevie T, please don't hurt me.
You are teeing up. You bring up the Memphis barbecue thing every time, and you tee up the people that fans that are in Memphis that are like, why is he doing this? I will reiterate that the last time we talked barbecue on here, I had people DM me, how could he do that? How could he come on the show and slander Memphis barbecue? It's sacrilege, I tell you.
That only makes me want to make fun of everybody's barbecue, though, because I'll tell you this, though, Zach. I've already talked about the Memphis barbecue. I've talked about the Birmingham barbecue. But here's something that all the Birmingham folks and all the Memphis folks will agree with. They're all better, including Houston, than St. Louis barbecue. Because St. Louis barbecue, I don't know what they're doing up there in Missouri, but I'm telling you, there's a reason people call it misery, and one of the reasons might be the barbecue. That, you know what? I don't care. Get mad at me about that one. And see, there we go. Stevie T, am I back on your good side now? Are we
Equal opportunity insulter.
Just so everyone knows, Houston has the best barbecue. That's all that matters.
Texas barbecue is no slouch, though. So that is a valid argument. But it's just, I don't know. It's funny how we always circle back later on in the show. We find some barbecue conversation. Credit, it does come from the fact that I had a freaking law put on me over the damn barbecue bet from over a year ago. That still haunts me to this day.
75% of the season so far, too, Zach. 75% of the season so far. Oh my God.
Question is question is who gets the law to be enacted in their favor this week. I have a good vibe, but I digress is all I could say. Actually, funny, before we even go and make our picks for the Birmingham and Houston game, we didn't even pick San Antonio and Arlington. We breezed right by that. I'm picking San Antonio. I mean, I think I made that pretty clear in my own talk about issues I have with Arlington, but I'm going to make this San Antonio, and I'm going to say easy 2-score loss. Give me like 27-14. And it's a repeat of week 1. I don't care. 27-14. It's a 2-score loss.
I'm funny enough, Zach. I'm torn. I am going to go with the Brahmas, but I don't think it's going to be as easy as you think it is. I think the Brahmas are going to do the classic Brahmas comeback win. 5 minutes left. They'll maybe be down by 9 points. They'll get the touchdown, but they won't get the conversion, and they'll win by 1 with a field goal. That's what I'm saying.
Dang. All right. More heartbreak. That's a lot of heartbreak around here.
That's the only way you got to do it. When you are a losing team, you don't lose every game by a lot. You lose every game by a little. That's the beauty of a losing team, because, and especially as a fan of many teams that have lost a lot, cue the Pistons earlier this year. Yes. You look at them and you say, man, this is a good team. And if it wasn't for this one mistake or that one call or this one thing, we could have won that game. That's the beauty of a horrible crap team, is they're good enough to string you along for the full season. And I think the Renegades, they might be that team, because they've had a couple, maybe one big loss, but every game they're pretty close. They should have won it. They didn't win it. It's.
I mean, if I'm being honest, the most off I've seen them all year offensively was last week in Houston. So. Mm-hmm. I don't know if it's going to be that again. I just don't know if they have it in the tank is the thing right now, and especially defensive side of the ball. I really don't think they have it in that side. Besides having a presence at nose tackle in Jalen Redmond, who has been increasingly getting better as the year's gone on, some role players have not been living up to the hype this year, and again, something to evaluate.
Yep.
That's all I can tell you. I got the Brahmas easy, but maybe I'll be wrong. And then refocusing back on the Houston item here. So, I mean, obviously, reality of wrestling, great pregame, but let's talk about in-game as we have it. So, I know you're going to put your spiel on Mark Thompson. It's going to go 9-0 and all that. Not trying to deflate. I just know it's coming, because this is what we're talking about.
Well, it's not just Mark Thompson. But go on.
Okay, that's what I'm saying.
Go on.
Well, all right. Here's my thing. I think last week was the footprint to how Houston wins football games, which is you have to keep everyone on schedule, and you have to keep Reed Sinnett up and available to where he's not too far behind the sticks every down. So as you saw against the Renegades, they were able to get some solid run game going, not only with Mark Thompson, but they even got TJ Pledger involved a little bit, which I was pleasantly surprised because I think Thompson helped open it up for the other running backs in that backfield to get a few lanes rushing. But what it especially did is it allowed the Reed Sinnett to be able to throw on time and not be the only target on that offense that defensive coordinators are queuing in on. Because if you have a decent run game, you can open up the pass game. It's the classic trope. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying Reed Sinnett's going to be starting to throw down 50-yard bombs downfield and, start lighting up the scoreboard like Dormady did last week at times in the first half against Michigan, or even like saying Adrian Martinez 2 weeks ago. But I do think that this is the best version of the Roughnecks you're going to get, is a Reed Sinnett that knows the defense has to respect at least the fact that Mark Thompson might take a handoff and take it for about 4 to 5 yards up the middle or bounce it outside. This is what your offense, and I think Curtis Johnson wanted again. Mm-hmm. Same thing happened last year we saw when Mark came back. They got to settle down. Kenji Bahar got to settle down a bit, and he didn't have to be pressured at the beginning of the year as much. Now, same thing with Reed, and it worked last week. My thing is this will be the ultimate test to see if it works even further, as well as to see, hey, is Birmingham getting figured out, or was that a fluke last week against DC that they kept it as close as it even was?
That, and so you talked a lot about the Houston offense, but I'm going to talk a little bit about that Houston defense, because if there was anything that shined last week, that was really one of the reasons, if not the main reason, that we won that game, especially when Arlington was marching down the field near the end of that game. What do? We shut them down. We pushed them back. We put them out of contention. They couldn't kick that field goal. They had to punt it away. It was our game. And so what do we see last week with Birmingham? Hard defense, threw them off their game. They weren't prepared for that. They're used to running around the field. They're used to getting those passes. They're used to getting those runs. They're used to getting touchdowns when they're in the red zone. And so if Houston can keep up the pressure like they did last week, and sure, you could say all you want, well, it's just the Arlington Renegades. They haven't won a game. They are still the defending XFL champions. And the Roughnecks did play one hell of a game of defense. And if you can put those two together, I'm telling you, it's not as crazy as it sounds that Houston is going to shock the spring football world this weekend and do what they've done the last 2 seasons and at least once beat up the Birmingham Stallions. And not to mention, this is another part of it, and this is just sports in general. Some teams get to the point where you have to lose, and the Stallions are at that point. They're due for a loss. And more importantly, they need a loss. You don't want to get through this season undefeated. You kind of want that loss. And maybe it's a little bit early in the season. You might want it week 7, week 8, whatever it is. But you definitely want that loss before the playoffs. Just as the reminder that you're not perfect. You're not going to win every game. And you get it out of the way now when it doesn't matter before it does matter. I don't know. I feel like things are shaping up for Houston this weekend.
The 2 years for Birmingham that we've covered them, it has been mentioned in both at some point by players or coaching that they did need something to kind of kick them into gear to get them into playoff championship mode. Mm-hmm. Even Alex Magoo last year, I got to sit down and chat with him. Same kind of deal. They took some lumps when he had to come in and start handling the offense as the main guy for Skip Holtz, and they had to figure things out. And by the end of the year, after some hard losses, one of those being against the Gamblers, by the way, there was no doubt in anyone's mind it was the best team in the USFL last year. And right now, for the most part, with I think some new incumbent challengers in St. Louis showing that their offense has increasing potential every week, Birmingham still has shown that overall as a unit, roster-wise, they're incredible. Now, does that mean things can slip up? Yes. I don't believe that there's going to be a chance where anyone does a 10-0 run, personally. I think that's too good of a competition. What I do think that Birmingham will be watching out for, because we haven't gotten the depth charts yet for this show, is the classic who's going to be starting at quarterback right now. And, last week, I'll say Matt Corral, solid job leading a comeback effort. And I think without some fumbles, we don't talk about a field goal win. We talk about a game where they probably win by a score over DC. But this is where we're at. And so I'm wondering who's going to be in. Is it Adrian Martinez, which, more of a scrambler type, but, still can throw it if needed, can chuck it up down for streaks down the field. I'm wondering to see who is going to be that guy, because I know for a fact one thing that's going to get tested, Stefan, is that these two teams, best two teams in the league against run offense, they are going to limit the opportunities one way or another, or we're going to see who can be able to break through the lines. Right now, Houston has the best average per yards attempt rate defensively at under 3 yards carry, 2.8 this season. It's a great front seven. We've talked about that. 1-3 record, sure. Their front seven, though, it is one of the best in the league, hands down, and especially at the run. They make you throw for it. So whoever's behind center this week is going to be getting their pass attempts. I am not as confident you're going to see Ricky Person or CJ Marable have as much success getting rush attempts this week because of that. And other side of the coin, being honest, is how effective will Mark Thompson, TJ Pledger be? Because I think this is arguably the best Birmingham Stallions defense they have ever had. And that is saying something considering the last few years, and the best they've ever had against Mark Thompson. So we'll find out how well this front line can bully people around. Because I don't think Houston wants to get into a passing battle. Birmingham is going to cause havoc in the backfield if you allow Reed Sinnett to be the main guy throwing things around. You have to keep it on schedule. And it's going to come down to Mark and TJ Pledger finding lanes to run in.
Mm-hmm. So at the end of the day, who are you picking here?
I know that there's obviously the fun record of the fact that they've split games in recent years. I'm still going with Birmingham just on paper. But it's funny. I look at this week, it's one of those ones where I don't feel as confident because it's superstition, man. That's the thing. This is a total superstitious game because of what the record shows in the past. I know for a fact I have picked Houston, whether it's Gamblers or Roughnecks against the Stallions, every single time in the last 3 years, and that doesn't guarantee that it goes the way I go. So I'm going Birmingham again. But I know what's possibly going to happen. I know that there's history there.
Oh, it's going to be good. Aware. Just wait till Ref Cam. And again, if you're in the Houston area, like I said, tickets this weekend start at $10. $10.
Yeah, got to get in on that action, man.
And if you're a teacher, they got a deal where it's buy one, get one free. Come on out to the game. Let's get live. Let's get over 10,000 people in Rice Stadium. Let's get it live. Because we saw how crazy it was last week. It was 7,500. Mm-hmm. And it was the crowd was still lit. The crowd was still live.
It's a good atmosphere. That's the thing. You wouldn't have assumed that there were 7,500 people there. It was a good crowd. So
yeah,
I want to keep them fill up because I know that you can get 10K out in Houston. They've had it before. It's just different venue and it's different stipulation and all that. But go support your football team. Plus, like I said, like you're saying, $10. Not only, again, football game plus live wrestling event for $10. Hello.
Can't
Why
beat
not
it.
go out and get that? Yeah.
Now, I'll say this. The next game up, Sunday game, this might be my game of the week right here. Battlehawks, Defenders. And if anything, it's just because it's the rematch of last year's big XFL rivalry, right? We saw those players. They were getting chippy on the field. They were getting lemons on the field. They were getting beers in a snake. It was, the crowd in DC has fun. And they're another one that has $10 tickets. They also have buy one, get one free deal from here until the rest of the season. Mm-hmm. So there's really no reason for you not to go to this game because you know that this is going to be a fun one to watch. Now, DC, they're looking to rebound. They haven't been maybe having the season that a lot of people expected after last year's 9-1 performance. Now, granted, they didn't win the championship, but I don't think anybody expected that Arlington would have beat them.
No, I don't think so either.
But this is the game. You know that if they want to rebound on any game, Reggie Barlow, this is the game that he wants to rebound on against the Battlehawks, who are leading the XFL conference, who are, I would say, their natural rivals just based off their games from last year. This is going to be a fun one to watch, I think.
I'm actually quite thrilled to see what happens in this. If anything, I just want to see the continued development of Bruce Gradkowski's offense with now having Ja'Cour Pearson back for another week and just kind of, I guess, seeing what they do, what happens with Harrison Butler as well, being on the injury report and being a do not practice right now as we're recording. But mostly for the fact that this is a game for St. Louis, mostly for the fandom and for the last several years. Yeah, chip on their shoulder. They haven't beaten DC ever. Mm-hmm. They lost both their matchups last year. They lost their 2020 matchup. I remember that because it was the last XFL game I watched before things got shut down. It was my birthday. That was for my birthday. I was a Battlehawks fan back then, and I watched them just completely get my soul sucked away from me in a 15-6 bout over in Audi Field while I'm eating chicken wings back over in Indianapolis. Great time. Had great friends over. Just took an L. Mm-hmm. And so I think this is personal. I think this is a personal game for them. And some of those games kind of was a de facto reason why they didn't make the playoffs last year in a heavily competitive conference in the XFL. So a lot riding storyline-wise on this. For DC, I will say last week, more progress. We've talked about this on multiple shows. Fred Keiss is an offensive coordinator. He takes a few weeks to kind of get his personnel figured out, knowing what works best, what doesn't, and he gets consistently better. They're 2-2, but that is a sneaky 2-2. And I think that this is going to be a good matchup for the fact that I think the Battlehawks defense it's not great with pressure. It's good, but I think it's going to make it where it's going to get opportunities against DC. In particular, let's see what happens if they can mitigate the run game and force Jordan Ta'amu to kind of play the hero ball role. If I'm the defenders, who am I leaning on as my main pass receptionist, if you will? And that being said, I'm asking because, Ty Scott was kind of that guy, but now Kelvin Harmon last week showed up big for the DC defenders as kind of that number one option for Ta'amu and showed a little bit of trust. Chris Rowland started showing up even more so last week, and they were finding opportunities. And DC had its own mistakes last week too. Let's not forget. There were a few moments that could have changed their own outcome and gotten an upset win against Birmingham. So, I'm looking to see how DC responds. They get a home crowd, which is going to be huge. They get to go back home and play at Audi Field. Rowdy crowd out there, so it'll be quite the atmosphere. But massive test, because both of these teams are on the upswing in terms of, better performances, but, who's moving faster right now? I think that's going to be the grand question. Who has more well adapted to how their season has evolved?
Mm-hmm. I could see this game going either way. I'll be honest with you. The Battlehawks feel like they're the team that should be, they should roll over them. But like you mentioned, Zach, DC last week, had it not been for that rain delay, they may have steamrolled over Birmingham. That's a possibility here, because anytime you get that rain delay, people that are in the zone, they're out of the zone. People that are ready to play, an hour of just sitting around does a lot, right? There's a reason that pitchers have to go warm up before going into the game. I know we're talking about two different sports here. It feels like the Battlehawks should win this. I think it comes down to how hungry DC is. It feels like you said they're starting to fix some of their mistakes, getting back to where they need to be the team that they were last year. But I don't know. I think the Battlehawks might pull it out. I think this might be the time.
I am leaning Battlehawks for one massive reason, and I know our own Jake Ball loves to kind of tease on this. Greg Williams' defense has actually slipped down the ranks through 4 weeks. They give up the most yardage a game right now and are actually ranked worst total defense in the USFL this season. And sure, they played some tough competition. Let's not kid ourselves. They've had a pretty rigorous schedule so far. And their first matchup of the year was against San Antonio and took us by surprise. Last week against Birmingham, Birmingham, even with mistakes, put up a ton of yardage. But, that's not going to fly with the St. Louis offense again. Now is consistently hitting on all cylinders. Number 2 in the league in total yardage, has been getting better in the passing game week over week, and run game in particular. I know that they do have possibly Durant on the injury list. That might be a problem, but, still, they are up and up the second best run team in the league. DC, second worst run defense in the UFL. So lot of mismatches this week. A lot of challenges Greg's going to have to deal with that off his podcast with his boy there that he'll have to see. Because I mean, hey, I love those appearances, but DC fans were like, hey, Greg, cover 0. I mean, hey, we could have been 1-3, buddy.
So you pulling the Battlehawks this week?
Oh,
then?
I am. I didn't mean to leave you hanging there. I am going St. Louis.
You're good.
Yeah, it's going to be. I think it's be closer than what even I know I just kind of gave St. Louis a lot of ins, but give me a 1-score game. The Battlehawks have, for the most part, up until last week, where it took knocking out Case Cookus, who was playing hero ball up to that point, to them to blow things away. I think it's gonna be a 1-score, but I think they'll win like a game-winning field goal. Personally, give me like 23-20, something like that. It'll be tight. It's gonna be tight.
Right on. Which again, I'm looking forward to that game. That game, I'm glad, is not the same day and the same time as the Roughnecks game, because I do want to be in my comfy chair watching that one at home, because I feel like it's going to be an exciting one to watch. Which leads us to our last game of the week, Zach. This one you probably have your eyes on. The Michigan Panthers and the Memphis Showboats. Now, you've had a lot to say about the Memphis Showboats, so this might be your time to eat a little bit of crow come Monday on ATU, so we'll have to see. Because I'll be honest, Zach, here, your team isn't in the best shape. And if there's a chance for the Showboats to get another win, this might be that week, right? We already mentioned EJ Perry's out. You've had some issues on the line. I don't know. What are your thoughts on this game? I have a feeling you think you guys will pull it out, but I won't give my thoughts on it yet. I'm curious what your thoughts are. Maybe you'll sway me.
Well, I'm not gonna spoil it yet, but like what I do have problems with if I were playing anyone else would be offensive line performances. Here's the thing. These are the 2 worst offensive lines in the league. Someone can come with another argument, but it's pretty clear that Michigan and Memphis are the 2 worst O-line units in the UFL, at least on the tackle spots right now. Tackles have not been able to dissuade any edge rush whatsoever. So I will say that's something that at least you get equal playing field. If you want me to throw that out there, you get a week of, I guess, getting to kind of adjust to that. Beyond that, though, I'm kind of wanting to see, in the perspective of Michigan, how adjusted is Danny Etling when he gets a full week of practice under his belt? And can they get more of a consistent run offense going? I know it's funny, like with the UFL this season, run game outside of scrambles feels very sporadic. There's like no true good running game right now in my eyes. Michigan was up there for the early part of the year, but they've kind of leaned away from it at times. And credits because game plan is dictated a little bit too. They, you stall their offense and stopping Wes Hills or Matt Colburn, and then, oh no, we can just go and send pass rush after EJ Perry and now going to be Danny Etling. So a little bit different kind of philosophy once you slow down one part of your game. But I do think that they have opportunities this week. Memphis defensively, I think there's been holes for them to take advantage of personally. Yes, Memphis, in terms of the run defense, is a little bit better overall, but there haven't been many rush attempts that teams have taken against the Showboats. They've been mainly through the air is the big deal, which they're not a great passing defense is the thing. If you can give Danny Etling any amount of time and Etling's not going to, and Etling doesn't throw a meatball or doesn't just decide to throw in through tight windows every week, I think that there is opportunities there. The other question is who, Troy Williams is simply it. First true start going to be playing this week. I want to see how that all pans out. Memphis's run offense has been non-existent anyway. If there wasn't Arlington existing as a poor rush offense, it would be Memphis we'd be talking about at this point, even more so. And that's just the thing. I don't trust it. So I am going to lean Michigan, but I don't know. I feel kind of weird about this one. It's almost like, because the Panthers are away from home, things didn't work out last time. I'm almost worried they're going to sleepwalk through this. That's my fear. I'm fearing like people are going to get surprised that Troy comes in, John DeFilippo and his crew turn things around for a week, and they get that crucial second win in what is now all of a sudden kind of a wide open number 2 seed for the playoffs midway through the year.
Yeah, I'll just say it like this. 2 words. Refs, law. Because if we know that the
In your
Houston
scenario,
Roughnecks are going to beat the Birmingham Stallions, then we're at least 75% sure that the Michigan Panthers are going to lose against the Memphis Showboats. And I'll be honest, there's a lot of things that you mentioned there that make a lot of sense here. One, almost the inverse of the Stallions. They're due for a loss. Well, the Showboats are due for a win. The Panthers, they're 2-2, but are they the most consistent 2-2? By no means, right? I think this game is going to be a close game. I don't know if it's going to be a pretty game, but I don't know if the Panthers are coming out on top. I'm going to have to pick the Showboats on this. 1, refs law. We already know. But 2, I just have a feeling. I don't know. Call it a hunch, Zach. This is, and we're getting into the weird part of the season too, where these are the wins and the losses. Some of them don't make sense, but they make dollars, right? And this might be one.
Yeah. Okay. I see what's going on here. Tell you what that helps your argument. And it goes back to that discussion on, well, we have the 2 worst O-lines against each other playing this week. What does help Memphis is that, and this, I cannot believe I'm saying this, but Michigan they have the least amount of sacks recorded this year and have not been able to consistently get pressure. That has surprised me. Early on they were, but Breland Speaks, Garrett Marino, I mean, they've been able to do great in the run game at times, but getting QBs down has been a struggle so far this year for Mike Nolan and crew, which it again surprises me given what they were able to do last year in that department. So if there's any shot that helps out, they're playing at least in terms of pass rush ability, the worst front 7 in the league. But then that makes a fascinating hypothesis. What performs better, a league worst pass rush or a league worst offensive line?
Right.
Weird versus mode we're playing this week, but it's something that if Memphis has a shot, it's at least saying, okay, we can let Troy kind of feel things out. Now that gives you enough time with your receiving crew that does have some pretty damn good names in it to actually get time to maybe get passes that aren't 5-yard slants or in routes or out routes that they've been able to throw, because that's all you can really throw with the amount of time that Case Cookus has gotten or whoever now behind center, because even Troy Williams last week, 5 sacks in the time he was on the field. So if you get any bit more time to get you to throw deeper down the second level, I mean, it'll help. Michigan's better in that department, though, in terms of pure pass protection or pass coverage, but still, it'll help.
Yep. All I know is 9-0, and this is going to be a fun week of UFL football, Zach. I'm excited for it. I'm excited, especially, like I said, I get to see the Roughnecks and wrestling in one night.
Yeah, man.
And then the day after, like I said, that Showboats or the Battlehawks Defenders game has the potential to be the game of the week. And even this Panthers Showboats game, I mean, this is what I mean. When it comes to spring football, you can be a fan of a team, but I feel like most people that watch spring football, even if they're a Panthers fan or a Battlehawks fan or whatever it is, a lot of these folks, I think, are watching all of the games, which is kind of unique to itself. But if you weren't sure about tuning into that last game, I think you should, because there is some minimum storyline elements that come out of it. Whenever you have two, I don't know, what some could consider mediocre teams going at each other, there could be a little bit of excitement that comes out of that, whether it's trick plays or trying. Because here's the thing, man, we're at that midpoint of the season. You're a number 2, but you're a soft number 2 in the USFL division. And if the Showboats beat you, and let's say the Roughnecks don't win, I mean, that puts them in a pretty good spot to get that playoff spot come later in the season. So there is actually a lot on the line for this game, even though we're only going into the halfway point of the season.
Got to be opportunistic when the time comes. I think that's the thing. And I know Flip, for example, has been very adamant that they have just not done that. He knows, and we know, on paper this year. That's why we were talking like Memphis. I still think on paper, at least, I thought should have been better than they are right now. That's why when I go on these shows, I get so frustrated and disappointed, because the roster on paper says there's no reason they should be 1-3 at this stage, and should have Case Cookus already out for multiple weeks with a shoulder injury. But this is where they're at. So times now, like you're lucky. This is almost the fact that the division has still stayed relatively close, where Michigan is in a 2-2 spot right now.
Yeah.
It's a blessing in disguise if you can take advantage of your opponent being in your house this week. Yes, you got to play them later in the year, still back in Michigan, but you got a home game, you got another shot, and Troy's going to get a full week of practice, and he's not too shabby of a QB. That was another thing that was great about Memphis. They have 2 starting QBs on their roster, with Troy Williams being there too. Be opportunistic right now. This is the time to do it. But, if you miss out on it, I wouldn't, Michigan, I wouldn't be surprised, and that's why I still think they'll get a win, is I just feel like even with the deficiencies, this is a good matchup because both of them have terrible front lines in general anyway. One's going to be slightly better than the other. That's all that's going to happen.
Yep. No, 100%. And I'm looking forward to it. And, that's this week's Monday, ATU, 6 p.m. Eastern. It should be an interesting episode because we'll officially be halfway through the season. And so I can only imagine the analysis that we'll all dive into on what teams are going to make it, what teams aren't delivering, this and the that's and everything else in between. So that's another reason, everybody. Make sure you subscribe. Click the bell. It builds morale.
Oh, baby.
And also let you know when we're going live, just like Monday for ATU, just like at the end of the season for Summer Stock 3, just like any other time that we go live in between. You don't want to miss it. Make sure you're following us on social media at UFL Podcast, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, all of the places. Make sure you follow PF Newsroom, Zach Kyleman, at The Ref Says, all the places. Because, we have so much going on with Newsroom this year, whether it's the Ref Cam, Mr. Digits. We have clips going on with the ATU Cam. We have all sorts of things going on, so make sure you're following us. And man, oh man, because like I said, we're about halfway through the season. We have a whole half season, playoffs, and a championship to talk about.
Lordy.
You're not going to want to miss it. Thoughts, Zach, before we head into week 5 and cap off this beautiful show?
Time flies when you're having fun, and the mid-season always feels like it always comes too quickly. But we have arrived. The back half of the year is about to be kicking off post this weekend, and we got plenty more action. It's going to keep going down farther and farther to the wire. It's going to get more tense. It's going to get more, I think, in between the weeds on how we analyze these teams and what it'll come down to. And, it's all going to lead up to an exciting end of the year. But, we're about to go over the hump. It's Wednesday in the league very soon. And the back half towards the weekend is coming along its way. Weekends are great. It's time flies when you're having fun. It's always weird to feel like the season's almost over and I got to hit the off season again.
I know, it's crazy. That's the thing, Zach. Just before you know it, we're going to be at summer stock, and it is going to be over, and then we're going to be in the off season again, and looking forward to season 2 of the UFL, which we'll be here to talk about it.
Season 4 of the podcast, whatever iteration as well.
It's so crazy. And then we'll be at 7 years in Newsroom next January. That's insane. That's
right.
Just insane. Which you should be checking out pfnewsroom.com daily for all the latest spring football news. I'll tell you real quick before we cap things off. I was looking at the ELF schedule because I'm going out to Europe. And damn it, Zach, wouldn't you know, the Paris Musketeers play in Paris the day before I get there.
No.
And then it's like they're away the next week, and then it's the playoffs. I was like,
damn,
no. And
dude.
I don't think I could change my flight because then I got to change my hotel. I'm tempted, though. I am tempted. But of course, I had to roll down like that. But either way, I think we're going to be covering some more ELF this year over on PF Newsroom. We have Arena coming up this weekend, Zach, which we don't know if we're going to be able to watch it or not.
I know. I don't want to. I could talk about it, but it would take an entire extra episode. All I can tell you is I'm a very frustrated individual right now. Games are being played, but I am very frustrated because not certain where the hell you're going to be able to watch these things. So that's all I can tell you. That's all I got.
I'm sure we'll talk about it next week, Zach, because if they are on this weekend, I am going to watch it somehow, some way, wherever I can. But
I will tell you right now, and I'll plug. Here we go. I've been talking. You guys, know him. I know him. It's Scott Burke, aka Slasher. He is one of the top mega fans and know it all AFL guys you can find in the Arena community. Next week, we are going to start doing a weekly recap show of the AFL during Tuesday or Wednesday nights. That we will have, the first one will be Tuesday night, 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Central Time. That'll be through AFL Fan Zone. So we'll cover the league. I will express my frustrations on there in full detail for how this thing goes. But if you want any AFL stuff, that's where I'm throwing it at right now. I'm going down there. Me and Slasher, we got the Slasher and the Ref as my co-host partners. It's like I love like personas. I love working with the persona people.
Hell time. Yeah. I like it. Well, folks, I think that's it. Let us know how you like the show down in the comments below. Make sure you like the video. It's free. It goes a long way. But until next time, sign you up.